Okay, guys, let's take a look at the All-State playoff predictor. This weekend we have a couple of key matchups going on. Oklahoma at Oklahoma State. What is it, Dallin?
Bedlam. Yo, you stop playing. They may lose that game. We're just grandfathering them in.
That's what I'm saying.
But that's not.
Also, we were talking about how, or Heather was talking about how there's a lot of teams there at the bottom of the Big 12, or at the bottom of the top 25 that are in the Big 12. So it could be a trip-up game, but also
it's your rival on the road. That ain't a trip-up game. And the last time you're going to play them for over a decade, like that's a huge game.
Yeah, it's going to be a big one. Other key games, Missouri at Georgia, which could also be a little bit of a trip-up game for Georgia there. LSU at Alabama. Washington at USC. Now, at 41%, the Bulldogs have the highest chance to get into the playoff amongst these teams. The Crimson Tide have a 30% chance, while the Sooners are right behind them with a 29% chance, Washington at a 21% chance. Is anybody surprised that Alabama has a 30% chance?
Not necessarily.
Okay.
You get that win against LSU, and you saw where LSU is ranked, then Alabama is going to get a nice big jump there. And then if they win out, because you got to consider that they have to go to the SEC championship and beat Georgia.
Right.
Then if you finish with just one loss in your record and that type of winner, then why not add them in the CFP?
Also, they beat Ole Miss already, too, who's number 10. So,
true.
when you look at – and, again, this whole thing is about pathways. It's how do you get yourself to the CFP. They have the path. You win your way in there. You get to a chance to play Georgia. And given their resume, if they do beat LSU and they do beat and they already beat Ole Miss, if you lose to Georgia, who may be number one at the time, and it depends what happens the rest of the country, we've seen this before. The SEC can get two teams in. Now it's 2-loss. That could be different, but it's a non-league loss where it matters where Texas falls in. So that you can look at all these different permutations and say there are ways in which Alabama can get in there, and that's not surprising at all for me there.
Okay, let's talk a little bit more about Georgia, who is not number one. They are number 2, which I find very interesting. If Georgia loses at all going forward, do you guys think that they will be in the CFP?
All right, where do they lose? That's a question, right? And
it ain't Georgia Tech. You wanted to say Georgia Tech.
No, I was like,
come on, bro.
I was gonna. First of all, y'all didn't let me finish my sentence. I was gonna say Georgia Tech is a good team. Georgia Tech has been playing well lately. They beat North Carolina. The last 2 wins were big. Okay. Let's not. They beat your team.
Barely.
Barely.
That was not a Georgia Tech thing.
That was not a Georgia Tech win. That was a Miami capitulation.
Exactly.
Hey, a win is a win. A win is a win.
You're right.
At the end of the day, all right, so not Georgia Tech, but if you lose one of those games, I think they still have a chance to get in because the SEC championship, you're going to meet up with one of those good teams, being Alabama or being LSU. And if you get that on the resume, you're going to look good. According to ESPN analytics, there's a less likelihood of us seeing multiple undefeated teams within the CFP. There are going to be multiple teams with at least one loss in the CFP this year.
Yeah, 1 loss. We have to see that the 2-loss would be a different conversation. The thing is, too, though, if they get to the SEC title game without losing, they're going. If the other team they're playing is a 1-loss Alabama, and a 1-loss Alabama beats them, and they go through like that, I think you're looking at a potentially, again,
you think they're going?
SEC.
I would say that they'll be in trouble.
Well, you're in a question of what else happens around you. Like last year, USC had to fall to allow the door to open for somebody else to slide in there. You have to see what all happens. But having these conference championship games matter. And even if the team has 2 losses, a la Utah last year, they can spoil the party. And that team getting there is really good. So we'll see how that all shakes out. But again, I keep saying it's all about pathways. They have ways in there, and they have a wiggle room. You can take a loss and still get in.
Yeah, okay. I like Oregon. Like let's say Georgia loses in the SEC championship, right? And then Oregon ends up winning out, and they have 1 loss. Would you take Oregon or Georgia in the CFP? If
Brock Bowers is fully healthy and Alabama lost to a 1-loss, then if Oregon lost to Washington and Washington was undefeated, blah, 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 then there's some different conversations there to be had.
Let's talk about Alabama because you're talking about paths to the CFP. So if Alabama wins out, do you feel like they should be in the CFP?
Yeah, done.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that's a simple question to that. Simple answer, yeah, definitely. Alabama will get in.
Tough one this weekend against LSU, so we'll see how that one goes down. Does number 5 Washington need to win out in order to be in?
No, it's the same thing. Like they can take a tough loss and they have a chance to then play, most likely Oregon again in a rematch in the Pac-12 title game, and that would be a playing game. If each one of those teams has a loss and they won to each other and one's to somebody else. Again, UW they've not been playing well, but they have at least 2, maybe even 3 ranked games, depends on when we get those games are played, left on their schedule. So it's not easy. USC, Utah, Oregon State are all ranked right now, and probably will still be ranked when they play the Beavers in 3 weeks or 3 games. So they can take a loss there and still get in. They don't have to win out, but obviously when you control your own opportunity, former employer said you can't control your destiny, folks. You can't control destiny. That's the whole thing of destiny. So don't say it. It's your opportunity. You control your opportunity.
Yeah,
okay, got it.
Washington is getting dinged for their last 2 games, the way that they performed. And I said it earlier before the show started. Michael Penix Jr. had the flu in their last game against Stanford, and we just saw Patrick Mahomes play with the flu, and then they lost to the Denver Broncos for the first time in God knows how long. So
we saw MJ play with the flu. Guy dropped like 3 times.
yeah, but he's a different breed. You feel me?
What's
He's
the
a
flu,
different
though?
breed.
Bad pizza. I knew you were going to do it. You couldn't wait to say it. Bad pizza, whatever. I was 12. I'm calling that the flu game for the rest of my life. Come on now.
We try to switch things up in 2023. But well, Washington is a team that is great on the offensive side of the ball. Their defense is really where all the questions are because the last 2 teams that you've gone against haven't been the greatest offenses. And I think Washington is going to be in for a barn burner or against USC. USC has the potential to beat Washington this week. And it's going to get really interesting because for USC, their Pac-12 championship hopes are on the line this week.
That's the highest over-under of the week, 76 of the year.
Yeah.
76 points, the over-under
insane.
right there. That's a
insane.
lot of points.
0 defense. The Pac-12 very interesting because they have been very strong this season, but obviously the CFP committee doesn't seem to value the Pac-12 as we've been looking at it in the same way. But when it comes to the Big 12, as Heather was talking about, when you look at the teams that are at the bottom of the 25, the committee obviously values the Big 12 a little bit more. So if Oklahoma were to have 2 losses, let's say they lose in the CFP, in the Big 12 championship to Texas, right? That would be an avenged loss for Texas. Do you feel like Oklahoma should be or have a pathway into the CFP with 2 losses?
No, I think their path is, I think you're looking at both those teams that are a play-in game. I think the Big 12 is the team that the conference now, after Oklahoma's loss to Kansas, is most likely to be left out because although they did throw in Kansas, Kansas State, and Oklahoma State in that bottom 5 of the top 25, that's great.
Yeah.
Those teams can easily drop out. All 6 of the top 20, the top 6 teams in the Big 12 are all playing each other this weekend. So most likely some of those teams are in the back end there, are going to drop out with 1 loss each. Whoever wins the Big 12, as long Texas wants Oklahoma to be there.
Yeah.
They want to avenge that and give their resume the most strength to put them in with 1 loss. If it ends up being a 2-loss somebody else, that I think presents Texas a little bit of a problem.
Yeah, I know Texas was mad when they saw that Oklahoma lost that game against Kansas because that's Texas.
I was mad. I was like, why am I so
Where are you
mad?
invested? Were you monetary? Were you betting?
I literally was so mad. I have a friend that works at Kansas, and he posted a picture from the game, and I was like, this just pissed me off. I have no idea why I was
hate
so
the Jayhawks,
mad.
not basketball, football.
Yeah, messing everything up.
Who knew?
But first of all, Lance Leipold, what he's done with that program is absolutely phenomenal. But to see them lose to Kansas was a gut punch. And for Oklahoma, I mean, you're toast if you lose 1 more game.
Yeah.
And quite frankly, the way that they performed in that Kansas game, you should have won. You look at the box score, Oklahoma outplayed them. I mean, you throw 2 interceptions in the 4th quarter as Jason Bean, and then you win the 3rd down battles. You would think that you would come out of that game with a win.
All right, fans, be sure to check out ESPN.com/All-State Playoff Predictor to check out your team's chances at making the CFP.
Give me something.